On this week's show, it's a Nintendo Duel SCREAMS double feature as Calvin Parsons of Sunscorched Studios takes us on a voyage into the darkest recesses of space to talk about negative atmosphere. Speaking of spooky things, Fatal Frame series producer is looking to bring a new installment to the Nintendo Switch, and finally, the Hype Zone tells us to sit on it. This is Nintendo Duel SCREAMS episode 122. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Nintendo Duel SCREAMS episode 122 for the week of October 21st, 2019, sponsored by meltedpins.com. That's right, folks. You are getting a double feature this week. We just can't keep the guests off the show. They all want to be on. Every one of them. Isn't that right, Andy? That's right. Andy's here. I'm Stephen Fontana, and this is Andy Asimakis. What's that, Andy?
Way too many guests to count at this point.
Way too many.
They're just
way too many.
We're trying to break down the door to get on the show.
They're here. They're ready to go. And speaking of guests, we have Calvin Parsons here. Calvin, how the hell are you?
I'm brilliant. Thank you very much for asking. Tired. Been working hard on our October hopeful release for the next teaser. But other than that, yeah, no, I'm great. I've drank a whole coffee machine, so you know.
The whole machine is in the bloodstream of Mr. Parsons.
Yeah. Should sponsor me.
This is excellent. This is really exciting for us. I mean, we're going to get into the game a little bit later on, but I do want to say that I think what you are creating right now is really, really cool, and I'm really looking forward to picking your brain about it a little bit further in the show. For those of you that are new. Absolutely. For those of you that are new to Nintendo Duel SCREAMS podcast, this is an interview show where Andy and I bring on an industry guest to talk about the indies and Nintendo's past, present, and future. Remember, Nintendo Duel SCREAMS posts each and every Monday for your listening pleasure on your podcast service of choice, including YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And of course, you can find all of our stuff, including written articles, our videos, everything on duelscreens.com. That's DUEL screens.com. Please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts if that is your podcast service. It will help the show out tremendously. And I got to be honest, I have not checked it in a while. So maybe on next Monday's show, I'll check that again. And hopefully, if you left a review, I will read it on the show. So go ahead and do it. If you want to get you want to shout something out, put it in the review. Say, hey, this podcast is really good. You should check out my website. It's lamp table bottle of Tylenol.com. Yep. Just looked around the room. That's the kind of show this is, Calvin. That's the kind of show this is. Remember, you can support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/NDSPodcast. Just like our Patreon producer, the demigod himself, Alex Gonzalez. We cannot continue to grow without your support. So please head over to Patreon and consider backing us. You could back us with only $1. Every dollar helps. More importantly, if you like what we do here on NDS Podcast, the best way to support us is to share the show with your friends and on social media. Spread the word. All right, so before we get into the lead story, which is all about negative atmosphere and Calvin, before we get into the Nintendo News Report, it is time for everybody's favorite segment. Guard your ears. It is Nindies of the Week. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the Nindies of the Week. What have you been playing, Andy?
I've been playing a lot of horror games, Obvi for the month.
Obs.
Yes, and I played a game called Sea Salt, which you brought to my attention way back, I want to say a few months ago. It is a really cute pixel art game where you play as a Lovecraftian god of sorts, and you control minions, and you have to go around killing people. It's amazing. I think it's one of my favorite games of the whole year. I'm not going to lie. So you get minions in these summon cards. Okay. So you begin with a swarm, which is like it's like a rat creature kind of a thing. Then you get worms, cultists. I just got crabs yesterday.
Oh, Andy's got crabs.
Very exciting times to be in. But you just move the little cursor, and that kind of points where you want the minions to attack. And then you press ZR on the Switch, and they just go to town, and they devour people and kill them. And there's boss
I'm getting
fights.
Brutal Legend vibes,
Basically, yeah, similar format.
but in 2D.
It's like a reverse tower defense game. But yeah, a lot of fun. It's really cute. It's got a lot of humor, a lot of gore for a 2D pixel art game.
Yeah, it looks cool. I figured that was right up your alley.
Humor. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So I'm loving that right now.
Speaking of up our alley, I've been playing Fight and Rage.
Oh yes.
Fight and Rage is a lot of fun. It could be there's a couple of bosses that I'd rather punch right in the taint and not play it because they're very, very difficult. But the game is so nuanced and actually deep in its actual combat. It's really a breath of fresh air. Originally, you're really just kind of mashing buttons, and then you realize that depending on the character you pick, each character has a up attack, a down attack, a back attack, and a forward attack. But the differences are so subtle, but they do very different things. But you almost don't know that you're doing these things until you say, "Hey, how did I throw that dude over there? Oh, that's his back attack. He grabs and tosses behind him." And your special moves too, like you could do a special move in the air, and it's different than the special move on the ground. And it's like there's a lot of balance here. The weird thing about it is you don't learn any of that shit until after you beat the game. So you're just playing through, you're mashing buttons, you're fighting things, you're like, how the hell did I do that? And then after you beat the game, you spend coins and unlock the tutorial mode. And then
okay.
It's weird. And then you learn the deep stuff about the game because the game really wants you to do speed running.
It's one way of doing it.
Yeah, so they give you like the vanilla game and they're like, here, play the arcade game, have fun. Now we're going to teach you how to beat the game in 4 minutes. Like with all these secrets and like these different combos and like all this stuff. And it's a weird way to do it, but I appreciate it because they're really a speed running side-scrolling beat 'em up. That's like what they wanted to be, but they incidentally made a really fun, simple arcade side-scrolling beat 'em up. The music is great. It's a lot of fun. Calvin, you are balls deep in trying to get this Negative Atmosphere video up and running, and I know you want to do another little teaser and whatnot. But have you had any chance to kind of unplug your brain and maybe play a little something on your Switch or otherwise?
Yeah, actually, I have. On the Switch, I've been playing Butcher. It's that 2D pixel art one, tiny guy, very, very difficult game. But I just can't keep getting over how cool the blood looks when you shoot someone and they just splatter everywhere. I mean, I'm not messed up. It's market research.
Sure.
I've spent way too long making gore. Jesus Christ.
Have you seen their latest game?
No, I have not actually. Oh, actually, maybe I have. Is it that one where you play as like this demonic thing? It's like tentacles. On
Yes,
the Switch.
Carry On.
Carry On, that's it.
Oh
yeah, it was on the
God.
Devolver E3 conference. I remember
Yes.
watching that. Best parody of RoboCop I've ever seen.
Yeah, I just looked up Butcher. That does look.
That's a great
That's
game.
another one of those games.
It's
that-
very
Those guys
difficult.
know-
definitely.
Yeah, it's very
Vortex.
difficult.
Those people,
Yeah, they certainly do.
they do it well.
Let's get in touch with them.
A little collaboration going on.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, there you go, Butcher. All right, so that's what we're playing right now, but what could we be playing? Let's go over the releases of the week. This is, of course, coming from Nintendo.com's Coming Soon page. So if it's not listed, I'm not saying it. So don't write in and be like, this is my Nintendo Dual Screen superfan Zach voice. Oh, you forgot about this game coming out. Shut up, Zach. I don't care. Go to Nintendo.com.
That was the best impression of Zach. And I've heard his voice several times.
Yes, I know, it's perfect. It's right on there. It's spot on. All right, so we got, it's really not at all. We got Monaco Complete Edition coming out on the 21st. We got on the 22nd now. All these games are on the 22nd until I say otherwise. We have Raging Loop, Day and Night, Tangle Tower. That game actually kind of looks interesting. Here's one I'm really looking forward to that I can't buy right now because October is such an asshole when it comes to video games. Skullgirls 2. Skullgirls, second encore, I should say, is coming out. I love Skullgirls. Those games are a lot of fun. The Park is coming out as well. Street Outlaws: The List. PBA Pro Bowling. Wonder if that uses waggle controls. I hope it does. Destiny Connect TikTok Travelers. That's one title, by the way. That's not two games. Mary Skelter 2. Lethis Path of Progress. Creepy Brawlers. Ghostblade HD. Okay, now we're in the 24th, by the way. Lethis was the 24th. Creepy Brawlers, Ghostblade HD, Logic Puzzle 1000, Cat Quest 2.
Wow, it's only $14.99?
Only $15, baby.
Holy shit. Okay.
I don't know if that's permanent. I feel like they're launching at 15 and then it's going to go up to 20. I think. I could be wrong. I'll ask Desmond. Dark Devotion, Haunted Halloween 86.
Oh, that's a great game.
I kind of want to play that.
It's like an old school NES game. It's like a legit. I think it's like a homebrew kind of game.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah.
Dark Veer, Anthill, Winter Sports Games, Vortex Attack EX. That looks really cool. Into the Dead 2, Pixel Gladiator, Soul Searching, Pizza Bar Tycoon.
I may have to get that. $25.
I know, it's only $5. Ultra Off-Road 2019 Alaska. It says Ultra Off-Road Simulator 2019 Alaska.
I guess
Let's Sing Country rounds out the week. Let's Sing Country Edition. Wow.
Great.
So before we get into... I know, great stuff. Before we get into the lead story, I do want to make an announcement. I am going to be doing a charity stream for Brooklyn Animal Action. I'm going to be doing this sometime this weekend. I might do one on Thursday and then one Friday, or I might do Friday and Sunday. I don't really know exactly when I can do this because I do have stuff to do Saturday, and I initially wanted to do this a longer stream on Saturday. But essentially, I want you guys to follow us on Twitter at NDSPodcast, or you can follow me at Batchild27. Brooklyn Animal Action is it's an animal charity here in Brooklyn that actually helped us out tremendously with my family out tremendously when our cat got cancer. They paid a lot out of pocket to help us because we were fostering two kittens that we found outside at the same time that my cat got sick. We're talking over $1,000 they paid out of pocket to help us. And they were so compassionate. They were so kind that I want to do this charity thing for them. So please, if you want to donate, I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. But if you want to donate ahead of time and just let them know that it's on behalf of the Fontana family, you're more than welcome to do so. Just go to brooklynanimalaction.com. There's a donate page. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put... we have a tip us banner on our Twitch. We've never gotten a tip in there, but because people usually do like bits and stuff like that, or they just sub to the channel. But any tips that I get during those streams, and really for the whole week, I'm going to donate in one large chunk from Nintendo Duel SCREAMS podcast. That's kind of like how I'm going to do it. So every little thing helps. On their website, they show you like $25 essentially gets a cat. Get a cat vetted. So if they find a kitten outside, $25 will get them vetted at a vet, meaning they'll get their shots, they'll get their blood taken, all that stuff. I think $100 gets them spay and neutered when they're ready. It's like different stuff like that. So I would like to try. My goal is to try and raise $500 for them. I think that would be an amazing thing for us to do. And of course, we're going to be doing Extra Life in November. So, your heart, wherever your heart lie, we would appreciate it. But that's it. I don't want to get into that too much. But we'll have a graphic made. I think Andy's working on something. We'll nail down the dates, and we'll start posting that this week, starting on Monday. All right, lead story time. Calvin, you really got a lot of people rock hard when you put out this little teeny tiny little vid or GIF. I don't even remember what it was. It might have been a GIF. I don't know. Of this very, very atmospheric, very, very beautiful looking I think it was just walking down a hallway. I really think that's all you put the first time. I don't remember. I could be conflating that in my brain.
Certainly was.
Yeah, just walking down a hallway, and people were like, hello? Yes, please, follow. So can you tell us a little bit about what negative atmosphere is?
Okay, so I'll give you the full marketing spiel.
Yes, please do.
Basically, it's a third-person sci-fi horror, and we've noticed in this sort of market, there's a massive demand for one. You know, people need a new sci-fi horror. No one can deliver it. No one's doing anything. Not mentioning any names in particular. But what we realized was
EA.
yeah, maybe. So what we realized was basically we wanted to make a game that the fans of certain franchises have wanted for a very long time, but either no one has had the guts to do it or no one has done it properly. And what we realized was what this sort of games community needs is AAA has betrayed us. They've filled it with microtransactions. They've ruined it with multiplayer and co-op. And what we thought was, oh, fuck this, we'll go back to basics. You know, what we want is a character on a spaceship who has to fight to survive, quite simply. And that's what people want, something that's genuinely scary, not something that relies on jump scares, you know. So it's just like, rah, Five Nights at Freddy's. No, it's like that psychological horror where it's like, holy fucking shit, I do not want this to ever be me. If I was in that situation, just put a bullet to my head and kill me. You know, like, this is the sort of level we want to get you to.
So, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to. There's a game we're not mentioning.
Yeah.
But I don't see why we're not mentioning it, because a lot of people loved that game, and it's pretty obvious that the tone here, or the for lack of a better term, atmosphere here, is very much like OG Dead Space.
Yes, absolutely.
That game changed horror for me. Like, Andy knows, our listeners know, I'm not a big scary game player. I really don't. I don't overly enjoy them, but something about Dead Space, Dead Space and like Resident Evil 4 are like my perfect horror shooter, you know, survival games. Like, I just loved Dead Space. Dead Space 2 kind of lost me a little bit.
Yeah. It lost everyone.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody out there knows that's the game we're talking about here. But okay, continue your. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
There he is.
Sorry, folks. My internet dropped. It's been very rainy. So I do apologize. I lost the internet. I'm sitting there, I'm like, my internet says it's fine. What happened? And then boom, it dropped out. So I do apologize for that.
Would you like me to start again from that sort of thing, or
let's just start from the top of the show. Welcome everyone. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm still recording, so I'll just cut out the silence. It's no big deal. So yeah, I just wanted to point out that Dead Space was the game we were alluding to. Okay, now you can.
Yeah, definitely.
You can go
so
into your thing.
What I was saying is, when we first announced Negative Atmosphere, we took it to EGX it was in London, and it was earlier this year, and it looked very, very different to how it looked now. And it's essentially because we wanted to test the waters. It's sort of a cheap marketing move, sure, but by making it so similar to Dead Space, we got immediate comparisons. Those immediate comparisons generated people saying, "No, this is a copy and a clone." They say that, yeah, that's fine. But then PC Gamer picked up on it. That got us a lot of marketing we wouldn't have got otherwise. And now we've realized that we didn't just want to simply make a clone. You know, no one just wants it again, something that improves on it. So we scrapped everything we did at EGX completely. We kept the name. We scrapped everything else, apart from Samuel Edwards as a protagonist. And what we want to do is tell a story that is as tragic as it is scary. We want to essentially give the player, because in Dead Space you could feel, there's two modes in Dead Space. There was, oh my god, I want to fucking die, I'm so scared, Dead Space, where you're running and you have no ammo. And there's, holy shit, I'm a god, Dead Space, where you're smashing them with a plasma cutter or the line weapons. Negative Atmosphere wants to sort of mix those two, where rather than it being two modes, it's one mode consistent. You know, one hit kill an enemy, but you've got 30 rounds for the entire deck. You know, it's a lot of situational awareness. And Dead Space as a video game, I always enjoyed in hardcore. Negative Atmosphere is very much, if you wanted to do a comparison to another game, the Dark Souls of sci-fi survival horror,
Here we go.
because it's very unforgiving. It's hardcore, very much. So, for example, in Dead Space, you had a rig on your back, right? That would tell you your health. Well, in Negative Atmosphere, you have to look at your suit visually to tell your health. Is the bits fallen off? Is it leaking fluid? Is it damaged in certain ways? Is the scratch marks, tear marks? That's your health bar. The way Edwards moves is your health bar. So as you get more and more injured, you'll start limping and eventually crawling.
Okay.
In order to survive. And that's because what we wanted to do was distill what Dead Space did as a survival horror into a sort of 2019 modern graphics package with a story that takes a lot of inspiration from actually Shock, which was, as you know, the original inspiration for Dead Space, System Shock, Bioshock, and that's in the story of Sierra. And Sierra is the sort of the antagonist of Negative Atmosphere, in that she's an AI that's become sentient for an unknown reason, but isn't necessarily evil or malicious. She just wants to survive. But she realizes very, very quickly that in order to survive, she can't just do stuff by herself. She has to get their bidding. But also that if anyone finds out she exists, she'll be destroyed, because she's a crime against nature. You can't have a sentient AI in this universe. And that's basically where Edwards comes into play. He's simultaneously a pawn in this sort of game that Sierra's playing, 4D chess, if you will, and he's also a victim of this outbreak. But within Dead Space, you had. I don't really like comparing it to it consistently because of how many comparisons we've had, and we do want to say it is something different. But obviously, fans of it would enjoy it. Is that you're not the errand boy. In Dead Space, it was always, Isaac, go here, do this. Isaac, go here, fix that. In Negative Atmosphere, it's much more you have to sort of figure your way out of this ship. So it's very much, there's no locator system. You have to follow either the signage or you have to ask Sierra. But Sierra herself can lie to you, deliberately mislead you to go to different places, explore this ship. And Dead Space was linear. It is much more open world. So you can navigate the ship in whichever way you see fit. Certain areas will be more dangerous than others. Like the maintenance crawl space, for example, you can move. So to sum it up, essentially what Negative Atmosphere is taking the combat and the sort of gameplay aesthetic and sort of the aesthetic of Dead Space, but distilling it into a very, very hardcore and scary sci-fi survival horror, more in the veins of Alien Isolation or Outlast, for example. So if you have any particular questions.
Well, I do want to say one quick thing before we jump into actual heavy-duty questions here. That's like a bit of a raw deal with the whole clone comparison talk you're getting. Because when I think about a game like for example, when PT came out, it launched like 1,001 similar games. They were being developed by fans, worldwide.
Exactly. Yeah.
And no one really said these are just clones of PT. They were just, look at this, like it's PT inspired. It's like, look, it's more of the same thing. But here you have a game that's, it looks at the setting and what made Dead Space work so well, and it's being labeled as a clone.
Exactly. And that's what we have tried so hard to fight against, because people are like, it's a guy on a spaceship with monsters.
But that's Alien. That's Alien, though.
Exactly. And they already admitted completely when you look at the interview with Glenn Schofield, it was we're trying to make Resident Evil 4 in space.
Right.
And then the plot for Dead Space was Event Horizon. If you ever seen the film Event Horizon, the ship, the Lewis and Clark, familiar protagonist name, lands on another ship with weird mutated aliens, and the guys you've landed with all get killed in mysterious ways. Oh, that's straight. Oh, that sounds familiar. Oh, right. Yeah, it's Dead Space's plot. Anyway, so the point is for people to turn around and label our game as a clone when they have seen 10 minutes of gameplay.
Yeah, it's a lazy judgment, I feel.
It's a lazy judgment. PC Gamer judged it as that. Called it a clone. Eurogamer called it a plagiarized ripoff.
Oh my god!
And then we turned around and we were just confused. We thought people wanted a new one. Well, EA is going to give you Dead Space 4. Yeah, likely the studio that made it doesn't exist.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
also to the fact that we haven't had a game like this in so many years, and
Exactly.
people
Yeah.
when Dead Space was officially, like, I would say, like, laid to rest, when that whole team was dissolved and it was essentially done, for all intents and purposes, you would think they would be like, wow, like, we've missed this kind of horror game,
Exactly,
like a
because
visceral science
that's what
fiction
we've seen.
driven horror experience.
Yeah, and that's so much what we've seen. We've seen the fans love it, but the media hate it, and it really confuses us because the reason I'm doing this, essentially, is because I'm not only a game developer, but I'm a huge fan of games in general, and I'm making a game that I don't give a shit if other people want to play. I want to play it. I'm making a game I want to play and I'm going to enjoy, and that's the best ethos to have, because if you can make a product that you enjoy, then surely there'll be someone else that enjoys it, rather than making a product that's going to go, right, how many dollars can we make off selling a weapon skin to 4-year-old?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, right, yeah. So co-op multiplayer? No, exactly. We're not making something intending necessarily to make millions. If it sells well, that's a side effect. But what we're wanting to do is make a game that not only scares the creators of it, but scares others. And not in a cheap, scary way. Like Dead Space overly relied, and you'll agree with me here, on the vents. The vents were a
Right.
gimmick by the end of it. You'd look at a vent and go, right, so this could come out of that. Well, with ours, the enemy's persistent. They don't just vanish. They will stalk you throughout the ship, and they're not just zombies. They some are blind, some are deaf, but they will actively seek you out when you fire a weapon. You fire a weapon and they're blind, they will come towards the sound. You fire a weapon and they're deaf, they'll come towards the light. So if the lights are off and you fire your gun, they will come towards that. If the lights are on and you fire your gun, you can sort of get around them. So that Stiltwalker in the trailer, that really lanky-looking creature in the teaser trailer you may have seen, it actually turned those lights out before it jumped Edwards. It will deliberately, and these enemies are very, very much in control of a situation where they're not just space zombies. Like the necromorphs were space zombies. They'd run at you, they'd scream at you, they'd scare you a little bit, then either they'd explode, attack you, pin you, lock you into a quick time event. These things are much, much more scary enemies because they're much more human. And the key point of this sort of thing is that in Dead Space, the enemies were dead. They were necromorphs. They were, like an ancient alien artifact that's resurrected these people. Well, with our one, they're actually still very much alive. It's much more like radiation or mutation, and they're trapped in their bodies. So in a way, it's more tragic and horrific because not all of the enemies are going to be dangerous. A lot of them will just be absolutely miserable wretches crying and begging for help, for their suffering to end.
That sounds incredible.
And this is the sort of thing with the ship, because everyone's affected differently. And we have a randomization system in place for these enemies. So not only is encountering an enemy unpredictable, how is it going to respond? Is it even going to be violent? Is it going to ask for my help? It's also very scary in the way that when you get jumped by a large swarm of them, you can't just predict the behavior as being the same for each one, for example. So one of them might stumble towards you while the other one might sprint. You can't just go, oh, this is a fodder enemy, machine gun, bam, 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 okay, they're all dead. It's more like, I'm going to shoot him behind me, and that guy's on the ceiling. Then the lights go out. It's this sort of experience that we really want to distill down into a core gameplay loop that doesn't let you get comfortable. And that's why the ammo is so limited. There's no shops either. You can't just go and buy stuff. You have to scavenge for it. So it's very much a game of risk versus reward, because you can stealth around enemies or you could kill these enemies, but if you shoot that guy, is it going to summon 3 more? Are they all going to come running towards you? And how are you going to run out of bullets? And it's this sort of level of not micromanagement with an inventory, but micromanagement with the simplest of things, which is ammunition. And I think you'll agree with me here, playing Dead Space, when you run out of ammo, that's when it's most intense, because you are desperate to find more ammunition to swing and fight against those creatures. And if you can't find any, it gets very, very intense very fast.
So it's very literally survival horror in a sense.
Survival horror,
Yeah.
yes. So we want the player to feel how Edwards would be feeling in that situation. And with Edwards being a war veteran, in fact, we have consulted with a lot of our patron supporters actually were ex-military. So we wrote them in on the project and asked them about their experiences. We had one who's on our Discord, RoboDoc, who lost both his legs to an IED in Afghanistan. So he's been quite influential in how Edwards is as a character, because Edwards is a scarred man. He's an older character, which is also quite different from most survival horrors. Most survival horrors, you play a young guy, 20 years old, Leon Kennedy, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Edwards is a lot more weathered. And what we noticed in our reveal trailer, when he was swearing a lot, is a lot of people didn't actually like that. They felt it was a bit over the top, a bit overacted. So we went back to the drawing board, looked at Edwards as a character, and we've gone back with a more reserved approach, which is essentially Edwards is not only a broken man, but he's a man that deals with these horrific things through almost, anger and sarcasm to try and cope it, because no one wants a horror protagonist who just breaks down and starts crying and then shoots himself, because that wouldn't be a fun game. It'd be realistic, but it won't be a fun game. I mean, that's what I do in this situation. I can tell you that for sure. But it's these sort of things that people look at in a video game and they say, well, why didn't they do that? And we're going and doing that,
So when you're at the drawing board and you're coming up with your concepts of combat encounters, of environmental puzzles, of the psychological part of everything, how do the conversations go so that you're not derivative of something? Like, it seems like you're pretty unique. It seems like you're taking these little bits and pieces of things you love in the games you play, and even in some of the movies that you watch and things like that, and you're kind of piecing these things together. How do you, and the critics will, have said, part of the hard criticism was, being derivative or a copy or whatever. How do those conversations happen? What is a conversation like that like?
So typically what we'll do is we'll sit down at the drawing board and we'll say, well, what sort of games have you played this week? What did you see in a game that you'd really like to see in negative atmosphere? And then people would say, well, I did this puzzle in Breath of the Wild in Zelda, for example. And then we'd look at that and we'd say, okay, cool. How could we fit this into this sort of situation on this ship? And then we'd look at this sort of puzzle and say, okay, so it's a light puzzle. You've got to bend a light beam to unlock something. And we'll say, well, what game's done that before? Okay, let's make it different. You've got to bend the light beam, but in order to fire the light beam, you have to use the big-ass laser weapon, and you've got to shoot a mirror with it. I mean, that's different rather than just turning around a block and shooting a laser at a mirror and reflecting it like Portal. But a lot of it that is the true thing with most gaming is that all games are essentially derivative. You look at any first-person shooter, it's a Doom clone. If you really want to distill it down to that, Doom did it first. Or Wolfenstein, technically, but it's all these things with gaming. Is if you look at most model AAA titles, they're all very similar to one another. Battlefield, Call of Duty, you shoot guns in it, okay? But they do something differently in the multiplayer and in the campaign. And how we found it is it's not necessarily the gameplay elements that you can't be derivative with, it's how they're implemented. So a medkit, for example, most games have medkits, but most games don't have medkits that can also cause you to hallucinate. It's this sort of things. If you add something extra that most games haven't done, then it's suddenly original, even if ultimately the idea has been done before. And we've noticed that again with, like you said, the environmental puzzles, the enemy encounters. We particularly look at stuff that we played and go, right, we're not doing that. We're going to do the opposite. Because it's this sort of unpredictability as well, in that we don't actually directly design the enemy encounters. A lot of it is down to RNG. We do use an element of randomness. For example, with the lights going out, that's always on a random timer. So it gets me, because otherwise you get into a sequence. Okay, that light's going to go out 0.5 seconds from now. But even when you're
can I ask how you tie that in contextually with the actual narrative?
Yes.
Why would lights be turning off at random different times?
So essentially, Sierra is the ship. So the AI Sierra, she becomes sentient, but she's also like the GLaDOS of Aperture Science. She controls the ship. So when she screams, the oxygen could vent from the room. When she panics, the lights could flicker. When she has a mental breakdown, all the doors could lock. she has direct control over the environment.
It's like
And
you're in
as
her
she
brain,
becomes-
kind of.
Yeah, essentially, you're in her body. The ship is her body. And that's what makes it incredibly scary. Because if you're listening to this AI start going, Edwards, I'm seeing things, and then all of a sudden, all of the screens flick on with random images, you're like, okay, what is going on? She starts screaming that something's trying to attack her. Obviously, it's not. She's an artificial AI construct. And then running through this door. And it's these sort of events that you just cannot predict that will instantly throw a player off who thinks he's confident in this situation and be like, oh yeah, no, it's just another corridor, it's not as scary. And then bam, all the oxygen's vented, the lights are flickering, Edwards is panicking and suffocating, and you're like, well shit, I didn't expect that. And it's all these unexpected events in the environment that we can directly relate to the narrative. So, Sierra herself, she starts very, very much like Siri at the beginning of the game, and throughout the course becomes more human. So she becomes more human, while Edwards almost becomes more robotic as he's worn down by what he's witnessing, almost to the point where time starts to become inconsistent. You don't actually know how long you're on the Rozanov now. Stuff starts changing very, very quickly, rapid decay, Edward's beard's growth, this sort of thing. And it's all deliberately designed after we've watched lots of psychological horrors, lots and lots of movies and games, The Evil Within being a primary influence, where it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Really makes the player question not only himself, but the environment and the characters. Can you trust Sierra? Can you even trust Edwards, the guy you're playing as? Can you even trust him? Is he even that good of a person? And it's this sort of thing that Dead Space never did that we're trying to do. And that is Dead Space was incredibly 2D in terms of character design. I mean, Isaac didn't speak for the first. The second one, he loved this girl, Nicole, who's dead. So he's upset about that. And then he has to, find a new love interest. There's no love interest in Negative Atmosphere. There's no love in Negative Atmosphere. It's very, very much a show of desperation. Think Chernobyl almost in terms of desperation. Like, this is an unprecedented event that cannot be fixed, and no help is coming. You are all alone. You're not a rescue operation, and there's no rescue operation coming for you. It's meant to almost be depressing in a way, because it's going to wear the player down as much as it wears down Edwards. And if we can make a game in which you're scared to open the next door because you don't know what's going to come out, then we've succeeded at making a horror game ultimately.
You see, and that's, I think, the crux of what makes this sound so great for a horror fan like myself, because it's really hard to communicate actual dread and horror without overtly telegraphing it too much.
Exactly. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you talk about jump scares, or the music is starting to spike at a certain point, so you can kind of tell what's about to happen. And in this case, you've taken that aspect and you've sort of doubled down on that, saying, okay, we're gonna even the whole that first experience of a moment that will always repeat itself, because it's always a random element to enemy encounters.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in this living, breathing enemy in a sense as well.
Yeah, exactly. The ship itself is hostile. Another thing that makes it really, really unpredictable is you can't necessarily backtrack through areas, but each deck, once you've progressed through the deck, you cannot go back to the previous decks. They're sort of like the chapters of the game. And you work your way from the medical deck forward of the ship. But on these decks, you could, for example, walk down a corridor and see all these crew laughing, giggling in this room, and then walk back and they're vanished. Or what you could do is walk back, get jumped by these enemies, kill them all, walk back, and then as you go back, it's dead bodies of your crew. Oh shit, you just killed your crew members.
Oh fuck. That's really good.
It's that sort of level of I cannot trust anything I see or do.
This game sounds incredibly ambitious.
Yeah, I mean, I want to wrap on one final thing about this game, because I feel like you have the right mindset with how to approach building a legitimate horror experience. I am curious though, when we talk about the Dead Space comparisons, one of their biggest thing was how unique their weapons were.
Yeah.
In that game. So can you give us a little taste of what kind of weapons Sam will use?
Absolutely.
this
So
game.
Samuel Edwards himself has access to quite a large arsenal of military weaponry because it's set in a Cold War sort of environment. So obviously you've got the traditional SMGs, the revolvers, the the shotguns, these sort of weaponry, and there's the traditional ballistic weaponry. But also you have access to things like riot shields, jury-rigged medical equipment, so
Ooh.
bone saws, that sort of stuff.
Goddamn.
And a lot of the weaponry as well. There's no crafting system. We don't want to overcomplicate it with a crafting system. What it is almost just weapon objects in the environment that you can throw at enemies to distract them with or even fight with. So you see like a welding torch, for example. You can use that as a blunt force weapon, or as like a flamethrower. And I quite like how you said that it's quite ambitious, but ultimately it's also not. You say all these things are ambitious, like we have to handcraft them, but we don't, because RNG in this sort of element with these enemies is all the systems we've built so far are completely modular and thus can be randomized very, very easily. So the enemy encounters, for example, use Unreal Engine 4's AI EQS system. So all of that deafness, blindness thing is pre-integrated into Unreal Engine 4. So it very, very quickly allows us to build this. Everything you've seen of Negative Atmosphere has been built in under 4 months. On a budget,
okay.
4 months on a budget,
Oh my
1/1000th of Dead Space. We are funded only through Patreon.
Oh my god. It's like totally insane.
Well, speaking of that, you got to pitch that. Let's talk about your Patreon. Let's get some people
Wait,
to support
I gotta
you.
throw some money at him right now. Hold on. While he does the whole thing.
What I will say is we do this part-time. We all are either in college or university, or we work full-time jobs. This is a project that started as a solo project with just me. So far for this project, I am the sole programmer, level designer, lighting artist, and texture artist for the environment. I've also done a lot of the modeling work as well for some of the equipment within the game. And obviously I run all the social media and do all this. So I've been working with Unreal Engine 4 for a good 5. I'm quite fluent in what I do. I can get stuff done quickly, so I'm confident in what I say I can deliver. And so far, everything we've delivered, we've over-delivered, if anything. Because if you look at the EGX demo from earlier, and then you look at where we are now, it's like a light and day difference. It's like a different studio made it. And everyone else on this team we're not actually a physical studio. We're from all around the world. We run our studio through Discord, essentially. But we are a proper founded company. We went through all those things so we can properly, do everything legally, contracts wise. And yeah, you say this is very ambitious, and we have looked for publishers, we have looked for funding interests, and so far, obviously, we've only been funded through Patreon. It's a tiny, minuscule budget. A lot of it's been a passion project. But we're starting to see this massive amount of attention towards it because of what we're doing. And yeah, it is ambitious, of course, but it's ambitious if you don't know what you're doing. As you've seen now, and I'd hope you'd agree that the quality of what you see looks like a professional studio has done it.
Yeah, it really does.
So, we really feel that we can deliver on what we say and what we promise. But ultimately, you don't need to believe us for that, because if we ever do a Kickstarter campaign, you'll be able to play a free demo before you back us. You'll be able to play the product that we've built so far and say, well, oh, this is shit, I'm not backing this. Or this is great, I am backing this. And it's that sort of thing that we want to do. We want to break those trends where you can trust us as developers. For example, on Discord, we speak all the time. We're very involved in our community. And the community's had a lot of actual influence on the design of the game itself. Because, as I said before, I want to build a game that I enjoy. But we also want to factor in what our fans enjoy. To a certain extent, of course, creative control is something we must still exercise. But the influences from our fans and the fan art we've seen and all of this is actually really, really pretty amazing to see a project that started, well, essentially out of my bedroom, still is in my bedroom. I mean, it's a global project, but it's crazy to see it get this mainstream media attention. Even if it is relatively negative, it's still attention. And it's up to us now to deliver a product that says, well, okay, PC gamer, you didn't like it, fine, play it. Now tell us what you think.
All I'm seeing is positive.
All right, let's.
Because,
What's your what's the Patreon? What's the website?
Patreon, just search Patreon Negative Atmosphere. But I will say www.patreon.com/Negative Atmosphere.
Beautiful. All right, that's patreon.com/Negative Atmosphere. All right, so obviously you're on a Nintendo podcast, so we are about to get into the Nintendo News Report, and our first story is about Switch ports. Now, we don't want to say anything, but you are going to be doing some sort of Kickstarter, as you alluded to. So, yep. I don't know. Do you think there's any? I'm not asking you to confirm or deny. Obviously, that you're way too early in this thing to really say something like that. But do you think there's some sort of what's the word I'm looking for here? Opportunity there for a Switch thing, or do you think that the scale and is a little bit too large for what the Switch can do?
Essentially, with Unreal Engine 4, you can export to many platforms, but you need a dev kit first. So what we've done, like I did say, I will just clarify this as well because I didn't clarify this previously. From the new graphical content you've seen past EGX, that was done in about 4 or 5 months. The stuff prior to EGX was done about 2-3 months, then scrapped. So total dev time is about 8 months. In terms of a Switch port, what we want to do is we want to put it on PC first, and then we want to go to consoles, hopefully. Then we'll be considering a Switch port. Because, if The Witcher 3 can do it, I'm sure we can.
And on that is a perfect segue, because our first story on the Nintendo News Report is all about Switcher. Andy, take us into the first bit of news.
So, the God of War director recently praised the Switcher, the Witcher 3 port on the Switch, calling it some sort of dark sorcery.
I love that quote.
To that quote, it is amazing to see how a game that is of this magnitude and scale be pulled off in any way on the Nintendo Switch. Now, it's not the best way to play this game, obviously. But it is a massive game, according to Corey Barlog. Sorry,
Barlog.
It is 3 times the size of all his games combined. That's a massive game to cram into the Switch, and for it to run at all is an absolute miracle. But I think this was a more broader conversation about Switch ports in general, because we were talking in the pre-show about the Overwatch port on the Switch is not getting the most fantastic reviews from what I've seen. I haven't played it yet personally, but sort of a lukewarm reception with that port. And sort of,
I want to touch on that because I feel like with the Blizzard negativity right now, I wonder how much of those reviews and those nitpicks and those, I wonder how much of that is in response to the negative Blizzard news lately.
So do you think there's a bias sort of leading that conversation?
I think so. I think people who are, I think a reviewer who is was super excited to play Overwatch on the Switch and was more willing to forgive it of its flaws, though that forgiveness goes out the window with the recent bullshit that they pulled with the Blitzchung. I that's just my hunch, because like I think when you're reviewing a product, especially a product that's a port, when you're reviewing something like that, you kind of are looking at it through a different lens. You're not looking at it from a critical art standpoint like you would when the game first comes out. You're looking at it as from an artistic standpoint. You're kind of judging it on in almost in a comparison. Like if you have a Switch and you have a PS4 and you love your Overwatch on PS4 and that's where you play it, and you want to know, okay, well, how does it play on the go? That you might be looking for reviews to tell you that very specific thing. So I feel like a review could have been 4 paragraphs, and I think what we're getting instead is we're getting people saying, okay, all right, Blizzard, you want to play this game? You want to do this thing? Okay, now we're gonna look at this through a critical lens. We're gonna really tell people how this thing is on Switch from top to bottom, and you also get I mean you were alluding to this in our pre-show. There are also a lot of people telling you how great Overwatch in general is in these reviews, and then kind of talking about the negative of the Switch port.
Right, because
which is interesting.
Right, like when it comes to games like this, like with Witcher 3 and now Overwatch and any other ports that would come to the Switch down the line, it's really hard to separate what the base game is, what it's capable of, any awards it may have won back in the day. Like Overwatch Game of the Year, Witcher 3 has 1,001 accolades coming out of its asshole. But I'm still playing it on a different piece of hardware. The game could be great onto itself, but how does it work on the Switch? Because clearly it's not the best way to play or the first option. This is more of, if it's my only option, is it worth playing it on the Switch?
Right.
Because what I'm seeing is, time and time again, the positives that go into these reviews are always what makes the game great. The content, the atmosphere, the character, the gameplay that from years back. And the cons are muddy graphics. It's the frame rate issues. It could be buggy or glitchy. And that's a Switch only issue.
Right.
So has it failed in a sense? Because yes, getting a game of this size on the Switch is amazing, that it runs, at all. But are too many sacrifices being made to get it on the system?
Are you talking about The Witcher at this point, or
just ports in general? Like Mortal Kombat 11, we played that on the Switch. We didn't walk away absolutely stunned by it. We were like, "This is like
no."
This ain't so great right now.
If I could interject,
yes, you may.
In regards to ports, you have to remember primarily is that the Switch is ultimately tablet hardware. Is potentially less powerful than one of the old NVIDIA Tegra tablets, NVIDIA Shield tablets. That was it. So you have to remember that when you port a game to the Switch, it's on a different architecture to most PCs. Most PCs run x86, Intel or AMD CPUs. But if you're pushing it to a Switch, it's more ARM. So you have to consider that the actual processing power required to run most games on a Switch is significantly higher than it would be on a PC, because you have to almost look at how your game handles all this multi-threading and that, and then throw that out the window and be like, okay, this is a different architecture. So a lot of games suffer in the graphical department because just the amount of power required to process everything definitely hinders the graphics, but it's also cooling. You don't want to melt your Switch into your hand. That wouldn't be good, especially if it's in the stand and your whole living room bursts into flames. So you have to consider when you're porting a game, what sacrifices do you make? Do you want it to run at a solid 60 frames a second, smooth, but look absolutely shit? Or do you want it to look really good, but run at like 15 frames a second? And how most game developers would approach it, and how I would approach it, is gameplay over graphics every time.
Of course, yeah, most definitely.
Right. Now, the whole melting in your hand thing, that was interesting, because there was a little story that came out that had hackers. Apparently, the Witcher 3 port is literally the PC version. Like, it has all of those sliders in there but turned off, and hackers were able to get in there, turn that menu on, and they pumped everything up to ultra high graphics, ultra high everything, and they got it to run. It looked gorgeous. It was all 1080, so because the Switch doesn't do 4K, but it was 1080, 60 frames a second, all the shaders turned all the way up, draw distance turned all the way up, all that stuff up, and they were like, the Switch nearly blew up. It was really pushed to its limit. But it's interesting that you can get it to do that at all with that hardware. So it makes you wonder what they can be doing with the now 1 year old rumors of a Switch Pro. But I digress. There are more ports possibly in the works here, Andy. Fatal Frame producer wants to bring a new entry in the survival horror series to the Nintendo Switch, and this is coming from Nintendo Life. .com from Leon Doolin. There's quite a good selection of survival horror games on Switch, but one series currently missing from the lineup is Fatal Frame, which, by the way, my only experience really with Fatal Frame is from Smash Brothers. Just throwing that out there. Speaking to Nintendo Everything, series producer... Oh, Nintendo Everything, so we should probably link back to that. So there you go. Nintendo Everything had the scoop on this, so I'm actually going to open that one up. We'll give credit where credit's due here. The quote here is, I do want to make a Fatal Frame on Switch, Kikuchi said. I think it'd be a ton of fun to play with the console in handheld mode and moving her all around. So obviously talking about some gyroscope stuff, maybe...
I feel there's a big chance for like an AR component to this.
I mean, there's no camera, but yeah.
Right, but if you have the Switch to your face, you can maybe project an image somewhere in your living room.
You mean Labo?
Without making it, without making it too cheesy.
Viewfinder Labo edition?
Right. I mean, I love his enthusiasm and the idea of like using your console as maybe a potential camera for something, but let's not forget you're making a horror game, and if it feels too gimmicky, you'll lose what Fatal Frame is really all about, because those games, 2 in particular, is one of the best horror games ever created of all time. Fight me, anyone.
No, I'll vouch for that.
Yeah, so I don't know. Again, I feel great news. Like, yes, I want more of this franchise, but just don't lose sight, because you have fun new hardware to play with. Be innovative by all means, but just know what your limits are and don't jump the shark too much.
Perfect example of not knowing your limits was all those games that tried to integrate Kinect.
Oh, good God.
They did not age well.
That's a whole other kind of horror story there, Calvin.
That's the horror game, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just don't shoehorn it in, and we should be fine.
Right.
All right, moving on here. Let's touch on this other one. So apparently, Nintendo is apologizing for Tokyo Mirage Sessions censorship misinformation and is offering refunds here. This is a quote. This is coming from Nintendo Life. This is from who is saying this? I don't know.
It is Nintendo, I imagine.
This is just from Nintendo, yeah. Okay, so we hereby what is this, a scroll? We hereby apologize to customers. We hereby apologize to customers for the mistake and for not delivering enough information regarding the contents of prior notification for Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE Encore, the software for Nintendo Switch scheduled to release on the 17th of January 2020. For all customers who have purchased or pre-ordered Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE Encore through Nintendo eShop or My Nintendo Store and want to request a cancellation caused by this matter, we will provide procedures in this page. So apparently, the reason why this is a big thing is because they are releasing the censored version of the original title, and people want some boobies.
Right. So 2 things here that I'm seeing.
Yep.
First things first is it got so big that they had to issue an apology, which says a lot, and that the thirst for anime titties is very real.
Very real.
And number 2 is, who do they think the audience was that wanted this game in the first place? Like, those who want this game want it in its full uncensored form. A lot of people, they love the game, but the Wii U wasn't the most alluring console back in the day. So, like, I missed this game when it first came out, and I owned a Wii U. So now it's like second time around, and I want it in its purest form, and apparently that's not the case.
I've heard that Tokyo Mirage Sessions is actually a very good video game.
Yes, it is.
But
a great game.
I don't know.
Played a couple of... It was all because it was on the Wii U, and the desire to pick up the game wasn't there because the console was just so weak to me. It was like a coaster most of the time in my house.
Just sitting there collecting dust.
Yep.
Unfortunately. Calvin, have any thoughts?
On titties?
Not really. I mean, I know we have a big amount of anime fans in our community on our Discord. I'm not really one, to be honest. But we do have a Stiltwalker Chan. Someone made... I'll post a link in this chat from this horrific monstrosity that we have created that you'll actually be able to buy on a t-shirt. So essentially, people loved the Stillwalker so much they photoshopped a pink wig on it, gave it a blush and anime eyes. We decided to run with it and go with it as a serious matter, and we made actual Stillwalker-chan t-shirts. I will post the link in the chat here.
That sounds like a Kickstarter exclusive backer reward if I ever heard one.
No, this is you'll be able to buy on our merch store that we're hoping to launch soon. Because what's better than funding game dev with memes?
I'm saying for in-game though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But if you
Like
click
an
on that
optional
link,
skin for the enemy.
you will see the horror that our concept artists have created.
Well, that sounds hype, but not hype. Not as hype as our true hype zone this week, Andy. My God. This is
the last of the news.
I am. I want to. We're pressed for time here, and that's not really that crazy of a news story. But the hype zone is the true important story of the week. This is a real lead story. Negative atmosphere. Sit down. You're not the real story here. This week.
Actually, don't sit down.
No,
Right.
stand up.
Stand up.
Don't sit down.
To attention.
Yeah.
Don't sit down because the hype zone here is getting. I mean, Andy, if there was ever a time where we needed to know, look before you sit. It is now. This is coming from Nintendo Life one more time. Nintendo Life has been the source of all our news this week. The Switch might be a technical wonder, allowing users to game on the go or on the couch. But if you don't put it away safely when you're done playing, bad things can happen. Nintendo's customer support Twitter account for Japan recently issued an amusing but serious warning, reminding Switch owners not to throw their systems on the sofa just in case they may sit on it. If you do this, you run the risk of breaking the screen, the analog sticks, and buttons. Not or, all of them.
Listen, just for full disclosure and transparency here, because I'm all about honesty in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through about 10 Switch at this point because there was no warning. I had no idea that if I sat on the Switch, it might possibly break.
It doesn't have
me
that.
No one told me that.
I do have a true story about the Switch thing. When we first got a Switch, my mother wanted to use it, and she, the Joy-Cons, you have to be very careful to put them on the right way round. Somehow she managed to put them on the wrong way. Upside down. Oh, you cannot get them off when you put them the wrong way. My God, that was a challenge. I was like, how do you even manage to do this? It's designed for a 4-year-old. How do you manage this? And yet they still did. So
that sounds like you playing Link's Awakening, Steve.
Yeah,
It's
essentially.
designed for a 4-year-old, but you can't figure it out.
Sometimes the simplest things are just the most difficult.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
But
what does
again-
L mean? That means lazily put it on this side?
Leave
Got
it
it.
on the sofa so I can sit on it later. But thank you, Nintendo. I mean, this might be the last Switch I buy.
Now,
Oh, thanks for that message.
very important here is the text that Nintendo Life put in here. It's the second to last little paragraph here. If you want to keep your Switch as safe as possible, we would advise docking it after a handheld session, or finding a fancy protective case in case you don't already have one. And then they give a link to their accessory guide. So, folks, there are ways to protect it, even if you do leave it on your couch. Where sitting on it might just be possible.
Steven, I think you're kind of sidestepping the real story here. That if you were to look at this tweet carefully, it is a graphic of a woman sitting on the Switch. I'm not going to stand for this coded sexism by Nintendo to indicate that women are only sitting on the Switch because they're that dumb. I don't appreciate that, Nintendo.
They can make a Labo accessory so that when you do sit on your Switch, it's actually quite fun and possibly sexual. Moving on.
Sounds like my kind of accessory.
Switch Connect sound just plays in the background. Just ching.
But it has to play the eShop music from the Wii. Please.
Yeah. No, it just plays
Beautiful.
the Me theme tune.
sit on it and spin. Okay, that's it. We're gonna get in the home stretch here. We're gonna play a little retro game club, but before we do that, I want to tell you about our sponsor, meltedpins.com. Meltedpins.com is a website that sells unique and original tattoo art inspired pins, buttons, mugs, canvas bags, all sorts of stuff, t-shirts, tank tops, whatever we feel like. We're getting into sweater weather. We're getting into sweater weather. So maybe there's going to be a sweater up there at some point. Artist Kelsey Lynn has done art for this very podcast before, working on some very cool stuff for us for 2020. We're just stockpiling some new things. So if you guys go to meltedpins.com and you use the checkout code NDSmelted, you will get 10% off of your purchase. That's meltedpins.com, checkout code NDSmelted, and you get 10% off of your purchase. You could follow Melted Pins on all social media at Melted Pins. That's at Melted Pins. Again, go to meltedpins.com, promo code NDSmelted. Now, last week's retro game of the week was Ghoul Patrol, which was a fun little sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It was a fun one. I had a good time. Thank you for that, Andy.
You're very welcome, Steve.
Okay. Now, I just want to make sure you were still there because it got quiet.
I'm still here.
Calvin, here are the rules to the Retro Game Club. You and Andy are working as a team, okay? You guys get 3 total guesses to guess the retro game of the week. Now, when I say retro, it means from the GameCube and back. So we go from GameCube all the way back to the NES. Okay? It is a game that had to have appeared on a Nintendo console. It doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to a Nintendo console, but it will have appeared on a Nintendo console. I will be giving you clues one by one. If you get it after the first clue, you guys get 10 points. If I do it on the second clue, you get 9 points, and so on and so forth. Now, again, you get 3 total guesses. Once you guess wrong, we'll move on to the next clue, and you'll only have 2 guesses left. If you want to ask a yes or no question, you could do so, but you forfeit one of your guesses. Again, I will be the judge here. If you're asking like a clarification on a clue that isn't necessarily getting new information, but it's kind of clarifying information already given, you could do that without forfeiting your guess. Andy, are you ready?
I am so ready.
Calvin, are you ready?
No, but let's go.
That's all right. Andy's a cheater. He always Googles, so he'll figure it out eventually. All right. Clue number 1. Nintendo is one of 2 developers of this video game.
Okay.
So this was co-developed in part by Nintendo themselves.
Okay. It can be it's a handful of games. I mean, in my research for this segment, I come across a lot of games that have that similar caveat. So, all right. That's a good first clue. But I think you'd agree, Calvin, that not enough yet to make an actual guess.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to clue number 2.
Okay. All right. Clue number 2. The second developer, the one that's not Nintendo, was solely responsible for developing this on the 3DS.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The second developer, the one that is not Nintendo, developed this game for the 3DS.
I have a guess or a thought in my head. So I'm trying to think of what games came to 3DS after the fact. My first
the 3DS got everything.
All right, I'm gonna make a guess.
Okay.
I'm making a guess.
So this is going to be for 9 points.
Yeah, I hope I'm right. Is the game Excite Bike?
No, the game is not.
Oh, God damn. All right. Okay. I really took a wild guess there, but why not?
That was a good guess. That was That was a good stab in the dark here.
Right.
All right. Clue number 3 for 8 points.
Gotcha.
This game was a launch title on its respective platform, and the first in this franchise to be launched on this platform. It's a little vague. That's a little
Very.
vague, but
Can you
it's hard.
clarify that a little bit more, please?
How would you like for me to clarify it?
So, the game launched
This game was a launch title.
a launch title on a Nintendo platform, and it was the first iteration of this franchise. So it debuted on a Nintendo console as a launch title.
Mhm.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, that is what I'm trying to say.
So the word debut is what really helps
Yeah, that's a
clarify.
word. That's a word.
Okay,
That
so this
helps.
franchise debuted as a launch title for a
Correct.
Nintendo system.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, okay. Again, it could be a lot of games, but because you're being vintage you, Steven. I
Yeah.
have no
A lot of
gameplay
the information on this game would
give
gives
it away.
way too easily. Yeah.
Okay. But we know that it was on 3DS eventually. So, okay. All right. Calvin, I messed up on that Excite bike, so I have really shot confidence right now. So let's go to the next clue. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, definitely. I've got no clue.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
This game is one of the best-selling GameCube games of all time.
Oh, okay. So let's see. What were the GameCube launch titles then? Wait a minute. Is it one of the fucking Luigi games? Luigi's Mansion? Is it Luigi's Mansion?
Is that your guess?
That's a guess, yes.
I'll guess
This
that
would
as
be
well.
10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, so this is for 7 points. Is it Luigi's Mansion? That's where you're going.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, it is Luigi's Mansion. It is.
There you go.
Yes.
All right.
Very, very good. That was
Yeah.
good. I mean, I was trying to be as vague as possible because one of the things here on their Wikipedia page says the game was a launch title for the GameCube and is the first game in the Mario franchise to be released on the console. I mean, of course, it's a launch title. Of course, it would be the first Mario game, technically, I guess.
Right.
But whatever.
So that's 8 points.
7 points.
You give me 3 clues, though, no?
I gave you 4 clues.
4 clues, really?
Yes.
You went through 4 clues? Shit.
Yes.
Man, okay.
So, yeah, we got Luigi's Mansion coming up very soon. Tomorrow? No? Wait, when is that coming out? Did that come out already? No.
It's really bad look for Nintendo Cast to not know when
I know.
huge
Well,
game
I know
is
it.
coming
I
out
know
for the
it's-
Switch.
Jeez, I'm blanking because I remember it was close to Halloween, but it was before Halloween, wasn't it?
No, it's the 31st.
Well, on the plus side,
Is
if
it-
you use the same questions again, you can use the clue of Nintendo.
It is on
Podcast forgot
31st. Okay.
It is
right?
on the 31st, yes. Plus, we
It's
do
very cool.
we do the releases weekly, so bad on
Yeah,
us
I know.
not really paying attention.
I
But
know, I know,
we're
I know.
good, though. We're good. We good.
It's the thought that counts.
Oh, it actually says it right here, October 31st, in the Wikipedia page. Grezzo handled the port to the 3DS.
Yeah, I don't know anything about
In case
that.
you're wondering about that,
I'm
I don't know who they are.
thinking, what could one... And
Wait, say that last part again. You dropped out there for a second.
you were saying about a best-selling game on the GameCube.
Yeah.
So
2.5
I feel
million
like
copies.
like a very short list to me.
Super
Yeah.
Mario Sunshine.
Yeah.
Sunshine, Metroid Prime 2,
Right.
probably Metroid Prime 3.
Right. And I also took a stab with given it's a Halloween month and you're lazy. So plus 3DS also was a factor.
Let's look at the
And
best-selling games.
there
Okay,
was no Sunshine
Smash
on
Bros.
3DS.
Melee. Wow, okay. Smash Bros. Melee, Mario Kart Double Dash, Super Mario Sunshine is number 3, Luigi's Mansion is number 4, Animal Crossing is number 5, Wind Waker was number 6, Metroid Prime cracks number 7, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle number 8, Paper Mario number 9, and Mario Party 4 was number 10. Interesting. That's an interesting list. I love the
Very
GameCube.
interesting.
All right. That is going to do it for this show. That was a lot of fun. I had a good time.
Certainly was.
We appreciate you joining us. We'll do a little spiel. We'll do a little outro thing, and then we'll get your social medias and all that stuff one more time. Remember, you could follow us on all social media. We are at NDSPodcast. That's at NDSPodcast. That's on Twitter and Instagram. I am at BatChild27. Andy is at PantsGuy. Remember, we are still on Proving Gamer, so if you want to go to provinggamer.com, you could still find our podcast, but I'm not sure if Game Stuff is still a podcast because they were going through some changes. The whole website was going through some changes recently, so once all that stuff is kind of put to bed and we understand what's going on over there, we'll either start talking about that again or maybe we'll be on a different platform. I don't really know, but we'll keep you posted. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/NDSpodcast. And you could follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/dual-screen-streams. That's twitch.tv/DUEL, as in fighting, like the two people dueling, screens, streams. And where can everybody find you and the game and all that other stuff, Calvin?
Okay, so on Twitter we are at NeatDev, so that's NEATDEV. For YouTube, just search Sunscorched Studios. We're the first result. And for Negative Atmosphere and everything else, Negative Atmosphere, just search Negative Atmosphere and we'll show up. Our Patreon is normally first, followed closely by our Reddit, where you can find the Discord links.
Awesome.
So yeah, we're just all over.
But hey, that's the way to do it, man. That's the way to do it. Our whole thing is that Google always wants to correct it to dual DUAL instead of DUEL, and it really pisses us off. It's very, very annoying.
Gonna love it.
It was a terrible name that I really love, and is now our whole brand. Thank you very much to our contributors, Zazu Pitts for our theme song. Thank you, Matt Murray, for our Twitch overlays. Thank you, Dan Colonna of Dinosaur Machines Podcast, Hit Buttons Gaming, and twitch.tv/DanO'Mac for our Nintendo Dual Screens logo. And thank you, Andrew Douglas, who has been killing it on our podcast art. All of that, all those cartoons and all that stuff of us getting torn to pieces by various monsters and stuff. It's been a blast seeing what he's come up with. And you can follow him on social media at Angimoto, ANGIMOTO. He's fantastic. And you could also hire him to do freelance art. You could go there, DM him, be like, hey, draw something for me. And he'll be like, all right, pay me. And you're like, okay, cool. And that's how people...
That's how hiring people works. In case you're wondering.
That's how it works. That's how it works. Remember to support us on patreon.com/NDSPodcast. Andy, what do you want to tell the kids before we go?
Well, we have guests, so many guests, and we're going to record the same day that this... Oh, no, we're not. Well, before this hits the radio waves, we're going to record with Sam Barlow, who is best known for Her Story, but more importantly, 2 Silent Hill games, Origins and Shattered Memories.
Indeed.
So that's happening, and I'm very excited about that. And there's
at least it's not that shitty one, that Book of whatever.
Oh, Book of Memories? Oh my god, that was a garbage game.
Yeah.
Diablo.
Glad it wasn't that shitty one, and we would have to.
That's the clone.
Yeah. That game was shitty. So yeah, keep your eyes and ears open because we have a lot of guests coming on for the spooky Halloween month. Very excited. All right, that's it. This has been Nintendo Dual Screens episode 122 for the week of October 21st, 2019. This is your second episode this week. Remember, if you want to listen to this episode's pre and or post show shenanigans, head over to patreon.com/NDSpodcast where you can get an extra half hour to an hour of content each and every week. Until next time, it's been Andy. It's been wonderful. Calvin, thank you so much for joining us. You are always welcome on the show. Maybe after whenever you do something with the Kickstarter, if you wind up doing it and you want to come back on to talk about it,
it's truly been wonderful. And I'll definitely get listening to you while I'm working.
Oh, that's great.
That's we have a huge backlog. If you go on. If you use like a third-party app or something that pulls directly from the RSS feed, like Google Play and iTunes or Apple Podcasts do not have all of our episodes. They only have the last like 50 or so. But if you do use our RSS feed or you go to provinggamer.com and you go into our archives, we have tons of interviews. Of interviews. We've done over 50 at this point. 60 at this point.
I think you like this, Calvin. We spoke just 2 weeks back with Stephen Kick, CEO of Night Dive, working on the System Shock remake.
Oh, sweet.
So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
that.
so we have a ton of really cool content. So we appreciate you supporting us, and you always have a place to talk about your games here on Nintendo Dual Screens. And also, next year we have a ton of new types of shows coming out for DualScreens.com. Folks, please pay attention because we are going to be doing some really, really amazing stuff. There's going to be minor changes to the Patreon that's going to get you more content each and every month. It's going to be great. I'm so excited for everybody. I'm excited for the growth of this show. Thank you, Calvin. Thank you, Andy. And as always, please be excellent to each other.